A soft, rhythmic tapping. It wasn't the rain. It came from my closet. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling, the wind playing tricks, but the tapping grew louder. Mo insistento. Tap, 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 tap. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a textbook, and crept toward the closet door. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. The tapping stopped. Silence. I held my breath, slowly turning the knob. The door creaked open, revealing nothing but my clothes hanging neatly. I let out a sigh of relief, until I heard a faint whisper right behind me. Did you really think I was in there? The rain had been drumming against the windows for hours, a relentless rhythm that usually lulled me to sleep. But not tonight. Tonight, every drop felt like a tiny finger tapping, tapping, tapping. Tapping on the glass? Trying to get in? My parents were out of town for the weekend. Their first trip alone in years. I'd insisted I was fine, that at 17, I was practically an adult. Now, swallowed by the cavernous silence of our old house, I wasn't so sure. I was curled up on the sofa, a Stephen King novel opened on my lap, but I hadn't turned a page in over an hour. The words just swam in front of my eyes. The only light came from a single lamp in the corner, casting long, dancing shadows that turned familiar armchairs into hunched beasts. I kept telling myself it was just the storm, just an overactive imagination fueled by too much caffeine and a creepy book. Then I heard it, a soft thud from upstairs. My heart leaped into my throat. It was probably just the wind, I told myself. The old house groaned and settled all the time, but this wasn't a groan. This was a distinct, solid sound, like something being set down, or someone taking a step. I muted the TV, straining my ears to listen over the rain. Silence. Nothing but the storm and the frantic thumping of my own pulse. I took a deep, shaky breath. "It's nothing," I whispered to the empty room. "You're being ridiculous." But the fear was a cold knot in my stomach. I tried to go back to my book, but the letters might as well have been a foreign language. My eyes kept darting towards the darkened hallway that led to the stairs. Then came another sound, a scrape. It was clearer this time, coming from my parents' bedroom directly above the living room. It was the sound of a wooden chair leg dragging across the hardwood floor. My dad's antique reading chair, the one he never ever moved. Goosebumps erupted all over my arms. This wasn't the house settling. This wasn't the wind. My first instinct was to call the police. I reached for my phone on the coffee table, my hand trembling so badly I could barely unlock it. But what would I say? I think I heard a chair move upstairs. They'd think I was a prank caller. I needed to be sure. I needed to know what I was dealing with. Slowly, I slid off the sofa, my bare feet cold against the floorboards. Every creak of the house seemed amplified, every shadow a potential threat. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a thick glass vase from the mantelpiece. It felt flimsy and useless in my hand, but it was better than nothing. I crept into the hallway. The darkness at the top of the stairs was absolute, a solid wall of black. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely a squeak. "Is anyone there?" The only answer was the howling wind outside. I stood frozen at the bottom of the staircase, my mind racing. Maybe a branch had broken a window upstairs. Maybe an animal got in. Raccoons were notorious in our neighborhood. A raccoon? Clinging to that sliver of rational explanation, I started to climb. I took each step with painstaking slowness, testing it before putting my full weight down. The vase felt slick with sweat in my palm. The fifth step from the top always creaked. I held my breath as I stepped on it, and the familiar groan echoed through the stairwell. I flinched, waiting for a reaction, a sound, anything. But there was only silence. When I reached the top landing, I paused, letting my eyes adjust. The hallway was a corridor of shadows, with doors leading to the bedrooms and a bathroom. The door to my parents' room was slightly ajar, just as they'd left it. A sliver of impenetrable darkness lay beyond it. The scraping sound had come from in there. My heart was a jackhammer against my ribs. I edged towards the door, my back pressed against the wall. I could hear my own breathing, loud and ragged in the stillness. I peered through the crack. I couldn't see much, just the edge of the large four-poster bed and the window where rain streamed down the glass like tears. The reading chair was in the far corner, out of my line of sight. I had to know. I had to see. Taking one last, fortifying breath, I pushed the door open. It swung inward with a low moan. I raised the vase, ready to swing. The room was empty. Everything was exactly as it should be. The bed was neatly made. The curtains were drawn. And in the corner, the reading chair was right where it always was, tucked against the wall. Relief washed over me so intensely that my knees felt weak. I almost laughed out loud at my own foolishness. It was all in my head. The storm, the solitude, the spooky bouquet had all conspired to turn me into a paranoid wreck. I lowered the vase, feeling silly for carrying it around. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. On the polished hardwood floor, leading from the hallway to the reading chair, were wet footprints. They weren't large, like a man's, but small and slender, like a child's. And they were fresh. The water hadn't even begun to evaporate. My blood ran cold. I backed away slowly, my eyes locked on the footprints. They stopped right in front of the chair. I hadn't made them. My feet were dry. My parents were gone. No one else was supposed to be in the house. Then, from behind me, down the hall, came a new sound. It was soft, melodic, and utterly chilling. A music box. It was the music box from my own bedroom, the one I hadn't opened since I was a little girl. Its tiny, tinkling tune, a lullaby I once loved, now sounded like a funeral dirge. It was playing by itself. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat, a choked, silent sob. I was no longer alone in the house. I knew that with a certainty that was more terrifying than any sound or shadow. The question wasn't if there was someone here. The question was what they wanted. I turned and fled. I didn't care about being quiet anymore. I scrambled down the stairs, tripping on the last step and crashing onto the floor. I didn't even feel the pain. I just crawled to the front door, my fingers fumbling with the deadbolt. The music box continued to play its haunting melody from upstairs, a soundtrack to my panic. I finally wrenched the door open and burst out into the storm. The cold rain was a shock, but I welcomed it. I ran across the lawn, not daring to look back at the house. I didn't stop running until I was hammering on my neighbor's door, my voice finally breaking free in a desperate, frantic cry for help. They let me in, wrapped me in a blanket, and called the police. When the officers arrived, they searched my house from top to bottom. They found nothing, no broken windows, no signs of forced entry. The wet footprints were gone, vanished as if they had never been there. And upstairs, in my room, the music box was silent, its lid firmly shut. The police said it was probably just the stress of being alone, my imagination playing tricks on me. My parents said the same when they rushed home the next day. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet and the wind is blowing, I can still hear it, the faint tinkling notes of a music box, and I know I'll never, ever be truly alone in that house again.